welcome to Thai PBS English News Service. I'm Supachon Klinswan. Her Royal Highness Princess Maha Chakri Sirinthorn visited Singapore's famous gardens located near the bay during a visit to the island state to explore ways in which the two countries can work together on future projects. Today, Her Royal Highness Princess Maha Chakri Sirinthorn was accompanied by Kaw Boon Han, Singapore's Development Minister, during her visit to the country's national gardens. The princess took keen interest in the various flora and fauna, taking notes and photographs along the way. The princess was also awarded a distinguished honorary fellowship by the Institution of Southeast Asian Studies in recognition of her academic achievements and her commitment to using science to help Thailand's development. The princess arrived in Singapore yesterday for a two-day visit meeting with Singapore's President Tony Tan at his official residence this afternoon. Tropical depression Vincente is now over upper Vietnam and is moving southwest towards Laos. This means that 20 provinces in the north and northeast of Thailand should prepare for heavy rain. From now until Friday, the northern provinces of Mae Hong Son, Chiang Mai, Chiang Rai, Nan, Phayao, Lamphun, Lampang, Phrae, Uttaradit, Sukho Thai, Tak, Phitsanulok, and Phetchabun, and the northeastern provinces of Loi, Nong Bulampu, Udon Thani, Nong Khai, Bungkan, Sakon Nakhon, and Nakhon Phanom must prepare for heavy rain and possible flash floods. The entire northeast, eastern and central regions, including Bangkok, have a more than 70% chance of rain. Large amounts of rain-bearing clouds as a result of Vincente are already covering Chiang Rai province. Typhoon Vincente, which ravaged Hong Kong and southern China yesterday, has been downgraded to a tropical depression and is now centered to the north of Vietnam, bringing with it 50-kilometer winds. The depression is moving southwest at 27 kilometers per hour and is expected to be downgraded further to a low-pressure cell in upper Laos. Countries along the South China Sea, however, are bracing themselves for possible effects from this storm. And more provinces around Thailand are reporting cases of children infected by the hand, foot, and mouth disease. Meanwhile, in Bangkok, doctors caution patients to be patient with their sick children.
Security at the Thai-Cambodia border is being tightened as all children coming from or going to Cambodia are screened for hand, foot, and mouth disease. Next to the border, all schools in Phayat province are closing for a big cleaning day, as 593 people have already been infected. Meanwhile, in Chaiyaphum province, 229 people have been infected. 203 of the patients are children, ranging in age from infants to 6 years old. Further south, 3 preschools in Sisakhet closed down after 1 child in each school were found to be infected with the disease. Doctors at a conference on control of hand, foot, and mouth disease say that while schools closing for cleaning days may help prevent the spread of the disease, it is not the complete solution to the epidemic. In fact, the epidemic is due not only to dirty and humid environments, but also infected children being released back to school a little too soon. Parents make the mistake of believing that once their child's fever has subsided, the child is no longer contagious. Dr. Sila Palak, pediatrician and dermatologist at Sivirat National Hospital, says that hand, foot, and mouth disease can easily be transmitted if the child still has a rash.
It's very important that there will be some virus in the disease, in the skin lesion. So you should don't allow the babies to go to school until the skin lesion disappears, usually about 1 week.
Yet despite its easy transmission, doctors say that the illness is similar to chickenpox in terms of danger and symptomatic behavior. If the children are healthy, then there is a 95% chance of recovery. Mortality rates are usually lower than 1% and occur when a child is malnourished, weak, or has another health complication, such as a brainstem infection. Like chickenpox marks, infected children should not scratch or pick at the spots because that will release the virus. The simplest way to prevent hand, foot, and mouth disease is for children and their parents to wash their hands frequently and to not share eating utensils.
And moving down to the south, earlier this afternoon, a car bomb exploded in Yala province as an anti-narcotics police unit was patrolling the area. The attackers then shot and killed the already injured officers one by one. The 5 dead anti-narcotics police officers were found in Wang Phaya district of Yala province. Another officer was severely injured. Evidence shows that the culprits hid 50 kilograms of explosive in a gas cylinder and placed it inside a car before detonating it as the drug busters approached. They then shot the policemen to make sure all died. One, however, managed to survive. Police suggest this is an act of vengeance after police earlier arrested a cousin of one of the Deep South's alleged criminal masterminds, along with a large haul of war weapons and drugs. Meanwhile, the military took prompt action in adding more safety zones in risky areas of Sungai Golok municipality, meaning every vehicle entering the zone must go through a tough inspection. The checkpoints will operate on the city's main roads and in business districts while attempting to limit the effect on local residents as much as possible, since Sungai Golok is considered one of Narathiwat's province's economic and border tourism centers. Representatives from the private sector admitted that the explosion has significantly damaged the tourism industry. Businessmen called for the military to intervene because terrorism continues with no sign of decreasing. Army Commander General Prayut Chan-o-cha visited Narathiwat province yesterday and expressed his expectation that the car bombers will be identified within a week. Additionally, he commented on the need for more security measures which may infringe upon the privacy of individuals. The government therefore has to carefully consider the issue to prevent further conflict or misunderstanding between officers and civilians. The World Trade Organization, or WTO, released its 2012 report today, revealing that there is a rise in the number of governments using protective non-tariff measures, which are of great concern to exporters whose businesses are therefore restricted. Still, not all such relatively measures are protectionist in nature, as some might be intended to serve legitimate public policy goals, from remedying market failures to protecting public health.
So, non-tariff measures are simply defined as all measures affecting trade that are non-tariffs. So the universe of non-tariff measures is potentially very vast, because everything that is not a tariff can be a non-tariff measure. A quota, a subsidy, a contingent protection measure, all these measures are non-tariff measures. Now, the distinction between a non-tariff measure and a non-tariff barrier hinges upon the trade effects of the measure. So a measure that has negative trade effects can be deemed a non-tariff barrier, while non-tariff measures, the way in which we define it in the World Trade Report 2012, are mostly related to the preservation of legitimate public policy objectives. So in case you will have a dispute between a complainant country and a defendant country, the complainant will always argue that the measure being imposed by the defendant country is a non-tariff barrier because it is negatively affecting trade, while the defendant country will always claim that the measure has been implemented to fulfill a legitimate public policy objective. In this sense, it has to be interpreted as a non-tariff measure that is legitimate because the trade effect is just incidental.
You were talking about legitimacy of public policy. Are there any standards that WTO adjudicators have set forth that, okay, if this passes, this level of legitimacy is not considered legitimate?
So the WTO, TBT and SPS agreements in their language state that a measure to be considered legitimate has to fulfill a given public policy objective, while at the same time imposing the least restriction on international trade. So in the aftermath of the global financial crisis, a number of countries imposed some measures like bailouts or contingent protection measures, anti-dumping, countervailing duties. These measures obviously have trade effects, and in this sense they can be deemed as non-tariff measures or barriers, depending on whether you adjudicate these measures in terms of the legitimate public policy of preserving some firms or some sectors, or in terms of the negative trade effects on exporting countries.
Thank you, Kun Bandit. The Thai Rice Exporters Association is urging the government to solve the problem of falling rice exports as a matter of urgency, since during the first half of this year, the amount of rice Thailand exported was barely more than half the amount exported in the same period last year. This fall is in the wake of the implementation of the government's rice pledging policy, which pushed up rice prices. This means that Thailand, which has been the world's leading rice exporter for the past 30 years, is certain to lose its top spot this year.
In the first 6 months of the year, Thailand exported around 3.45 million tons of rice worth 70 billion baht. This is a 45% drop in quantity and a 34% drop in value year on year. President of the Thai Rice Exporters Association attributed the plunge in exports to higher prices, leading to a drop in demand from major foreign customers like Iraq, Indonesia, and South Africa. The fact that prices sought by Thailand's competitor countries remain low goes against the government's claim that its rice pledging scheme will help local farmers by jacking up world rice prices. In the second half of the year, the association forecast that Thailand will export only another 3.5 million tons of rice, losing market share to India, which will have greater export capacity from a doubling of its rice stock from 15 to 30 million tons. Additionally, depreciation in the value of the Indian rupee makes its rice even cheaper. Thai rice exporters will also be impacted by a reduction in demand from Indonesia and the Philippines, which have switched to consume cheaper Vietnamese rice. The group's prediction on export figures reflects that of the United States Department of Agriculture at 6.5 million tons throughout the year, and means that Thailand will end this year as the world's third largest rice exporter, trailing behind India at 8 million tons and Vietnam at 7 million tons. The Thai Rice Exporters Association has urged the government to rectify the problem stemming from the state's rice pledging program, warning that the country's rice exporting industry could be irrevocably damaged.
Aung San Suu Kyi, Myanmar's opposition leader, has joined a debate in the country's parliament today. It was her first participation in debate since she was elected in April. In the debate, she supported the proposals to pass a law to protect the rights of ethnic national races, including the freedom to develop their own literature, culture, arts, customs, and freedom of worship. This Nobel Peace Prize laureate took the oath in office in May when the previous parliamentary session ended. She won her seat in the election with 42 others from her National League for Democracy. Their wins at the polls made them the largest opposition bloc in the 664-seat assembly. It seems as though at every Summer Olympics since 2004, the Thai Taekwondo team just keeps on improving. At the 2008 Beijing Games, Butri Phuyatpong, also known as Nong Song, won the silver medal for Thailand.
As a child, Butri Phuyatpong, affectionately known as Nong Song, was often ill and suffered from asthma. But when her doctor recommended exercise, she decided to follow in her older sister's footsteps and learn Taekwondo. It seems like the sport suited her, for within a few years of starting her training, Nong Song started winning municipal, then regional, and finally national tournaments. In 2008, she made it to the Beijing Summer Olympics, where she competed in the fin weight category, the same as Taekwondo pioneer Yawapa Buraponchai in the 2004 Summer Olympics. She caused a lot of suspense in her first round when she qualified for the last 8 finalists, during the semi-finals and finally the finals, when she and her opponent would fight into overtime in each round. She won each match until she met China's Wu Jingyu, whose tall, sturdy frame and solid support from the audience won her the gold medal. But Butri Phuyatpong wasn't downhearted. She is the first Thai woman to win a silver medal in Taekwondo, an accomplishment that Thai people will never forget. Hugh Adams, Thai PBS.
And that's all the time we have for tonight's edition of Thai PBS English News Service. We'll see you again tomorrow night. I'm Supachon Klin Sawan. Good night. สวัสดีครับ